Hey guys, Abby from Motor City Nerds here, and you wanna know what? I just feel like talking some Game of Thrones. And you know when you have your own little headcanon about things? I always think that I say these things out loud until I say them out loud, and then people are like, oh my god, what? And then I realize, oh, you never thought about that? Remember to subscribe, comment, share, especially coming up. We got lots of House of the Dragon, and we're gonna be cranking out videos today, but Varys. Let's talk about Varys, the eunuch. Now, I'm not gonna get all crazy into everything, but I always kind of took it as Varys kind of did what Arya did, or at least was affiliated somehow with the Faceless Men. I think that he got really high up and dipped out. I don't think he's a faceless man, but I definitely think he's affiliated, or was running around with them and was trained by them. I know he says that he ran around with actors and mummers, but I don't believe that. I think he got really high up in the Faceless Men and learned a lot of really good tricks, and then he dipped out. Now, if you've watched the show, if you read the books, you know that he has his little birds, which are his network of spies, and he always uses children. Now, that can come off as, like, creepy, right? Why are you using kids? But then it's like, no, he's giving these kids that otherwise wouldn't have an opportunity to, like, survive. Not just that, the reason he got to where he is, and this is why I said it would be really cool to even do just a mini-series of, I think it'd be a really cool mini-series to do, like, 4 or 5 episodes that are really well done of him when he's young, because after he gets his junk chopped off, he meets Illyrio Mopatis. Illyrio Mopatis is the fat dude who sells Daenerys Targaryen to Khal Drogo. They're BFFs. Back in the day, when he got his junk snipped, after that happened, the guy who used him threw him out into the street, and he was just bleeding out and dying, and he was saved by Illyrio. Now, Illyrio is a badass. Illyrio is one of the best people with a sword. This is when he's young, so he's a badass. He can fight, he can kill, he's really good at it. He saves Varys' life. They become BFFs. They start running around, and what they would do is Varys would rob them, and then they'd come chasing after Varys, and then Illyrio would be around the corner, and he'd be like, do you want to fight, or do you want to get your ass kicked, or do you want to die? And that's how they started making money and getting richer and richer and richer. Well, then Varys was like, do you want to know what's worth a lot more? These rich people's information. So that's when he started sneaking into people's houses and stealing their information, reading their letters, learning all about them, and then he started moving up the ranks. Him and Illyrio went from the bottom of the bottom to Illyrio is running Pentos, and if you read the books, he's running Targaryen restorations and all that, and even in the show, in the beginning he is. But, like, he got into a really high place of power. Varys, you got all the way to the Red Keep in Westeros. Like, that's hard to do, you know what I mean? So I think that's and it's a cool little story. It's these 2 kids, like teenagers essentially, surviving together and moving their way up. Several times they talk, I know a lot of people think Varys is a mermaid. I don't think Varys is a mermaid. Throughout the books, especially, Varys sneaks up on people. I have the quote wrote down, Ned did not hear the eunuch approach. Like, Ned is like, what the, like, he several times in the books we hear how he walked up on people or snuck up on people and they had no clue he was there. Who else does that? Quiet as a shadow. Arya does that. Weird. Throughout the entire book series, he is always in elaborate costumes. And one of my favorite things, because this is true, and one of my favorite, it's not the exact quote, I'm paraphrasing here, but he goes to meet Shay, Tyrion's asshole girlfriend, and he's dressed like a pregnant woman. He smells different, he looks different, he sounds different. Now, when you're learning about the Faceless Men with Arya in the books right now, she still can't do the face swapping shit. She can only do, like, that's what they tell her. They're like, you need to learn to look different, move different, see different, and people will look at you and see somebody else. And Varys does that a lot. He's talking to Shay, and she's like, that's a dude. And Tyrion's like, no, that's a lady. That's a pregnant lady. Stop. And Tyrion knows Varys pretty well. And she's like, no, man, that's a dude in a dress. And I know it. And he's like, how? Oh, no, it's not. And she's like, I have to know because I'm a whore. And if I don't know these things, if I don't know who somebody is when they walk into the room, that's how I end up dead. And I was like, I always really like that because that's accurate. Like, you need to know your surroundings, but especially with what she does, it's like, no, that's very true. And we're ladies, and we need to be scared of everybody at all times because it's a scary world. Can you guys hear my garage opening? So there's that time when he looks like the pregnant woman, and like I said, it's not just he's dressed up. It's your best friend doesn't even recognize you. When he's with Illyrio, remember when Arya's running under the Red Keep, and she says, I heard them talking about killing you, Dad. I heard them talking about getting rid of the next stand of the king. In the books, he's way more dressed up, and he's in, I think he's dressed as a soldier, and he's walking around with Illyrio, and that's why Arya doesn't recognize him. Then there's the stout man he dresses up as, and then when Ned is underneath the Red Keep, before he gets executed, Varys comes to see him and hands him a wineskin or something. And in the show, he's dressed up, but in the book, Ned has no clue. I think they kind of say it in the show too, but especially in the book, he's like, he has no clue that that's Varys. And then he's like, hey, it's me. And Ned even says, like, oh my God, he smells different, he sounds different. That's not the Varys I know. And Ned even says it in the show. He's like, and it's a great line. This is a great line. He's like, you grew up with actors. You learned their craft. I grew up with soldiers. I learned how to die a long time ago. And it's like, that's a great line. But I don't think he grew up with actors. I think he was running around with the Faceless Men. That's what I think. Because when I talk about the smell and the sound and stuff, the reason that is a big deal is because that is discussed a lot when Varys is in the room. He smells like lavender, and his hands are powdered, and there's a very specific look to Varys and the way they describe him when he's doing Varys stuff, when he's in the throne room, when he's in the small council meetings. It's a very distinct, specific way he carries himself and presents himself. And then when he does these disguises, which there's several of them, it's like you don't even know it. And it's, like I said, it's not just the look, it's everything about him. The only other people I know that do that in the series are the Faceless Men. Varys was a slave. That's very Bravos and slavery and all that. There's an argument to be had that it's like then he wouldn't like Targaryens, but he's setting up the Targaryens to take back over. But he just wants a good ruler. But either way, he was a slave before, and so he really sympathizes with that. But that ties back to like hardcore Bravos stuff. Once again, that's where the Faceless Men are. He's extremely knowledgeable about everywhere. So. No, the Faceless Men are also like that. He knows a lot about a lot of places. Also, I think it's the way that Jake and Hagar takes Arya, or the kind old man, whatever you want to call him, the way he takes to Arya, this small little kid, is kind of the same way Varys takes to his little birds. Yes, they are useful, but there's a similarity there. It's also discussed often that, and we see it in the show, and we read it in the book, that he's using the tunnels and the secret passages throughout the Red Keep to get around the castle. A lot of times, Cersei says that she has to convince herself. You know when everybody's like, oh, be quiet? That's why Olenna Tyrell, that's one of my favorite things in the books that they don't do in the show. She always has a singer with her and makes him sing super loud because she never knows who's trying to listen to them and overhear them. And it's because people are in the walls, literally in the Red Keep, listening to things you're saying. And Cersei tries to convince herself one night. She's like, oh, it's just mice. It's just mice in the walls. It's just mice in the walls. And that happens often in the books. Is it Varys? Or is it Varys' little birds? Now, that's some sneaky stuff. Like I said, that doesn't mean he's a faceless man, but I definitely think there's a connection there. It's just weird how quick, quiet, sneaky, and the only other characters that have those qualities are the Faceless Men. So I think, and this is just a fun theory that I kind of always thought, I just always had it in the back of my head, and then when I say it out loud, people are like, what? And then whispers, sneakiness, like that's all like Faceless Men-y sounding to me, you know what I mean? But I just always had that in the back of my head, and then when I say it out loud to people, they're like, oh my God, I never thought about that, and I was like, oh, I thought we all, kind of like Maester Aemon with that video I did. I was like, I think that they'd be better off if Maester Aemon would have said yes to being king. But then I realized maybe not everybody thinks this way. But no, I do. I think that Varys has some type of very big connection with the Faceless Men. I don't think he grew up as an actor. I think that he got... I'm wondering if maybe it was something like... Because he doesn't like to kill people. That's the only thing here. Like, Arya's a trained assassin, you know what I mean? Varys isn't like that. He's not a fighter. So I'm like, maybe you just didn't have that part down. Maybe taking a life wasn't your jammy. So you were like, I'm going to dip, and I'm going to use these qualities to do other things, whatever. Now, there's a whole bunch of arguments he had with like the Young Griff stuff and the Illyrio stuff, because I definitely think there's some shifty shit going on there. But whatever you think about, this isn't anything like good, bad, who's doing what. It's just, I always thought this. And then, like I said, enough people were going, oh my God, I never thought about that, but that's very plausible. I'm like, yeah, I think he got just very similar to Arya. I think he got in, was working around there, was around it, learned their craft a bit, but then was like, I don't want to fully commit, and dipped out. But I also want to know the rules of, I'm pretty sure the Faceless Men just wouldn't let you dip out. Everyone keeps talking about this Jon Snow sequel, but the truth is, George R. R. Martin always said he wanted to do an Arya sequel, and I'm like, I don't think the Faceless Men would let you run around, and that might be a good way to go. If they are going to do this sequel, of course Arya would be there, right? If they're going to do Jon Snow, Arya's got to be there. And George R. R. Martin always said if he did a sequel, he'd want to do it mainly with Arya. But what if the Faceless Men are chasing her down? Because like I said, I want to know, like, are you allowed to just dip out? Is that allowed? I don't think that would be allowed. But just think about it. If you've read the books, there's very similar things here. It really made me think that when I was reading them was the way he walks up on people. It's very similar to how they start describing Arya later on. And it's like, how's this guy just sneaking out? And like, these are like trained fighters and stuff. So I don't know. Tell me what you think down in the comments. This is a short little video, but I've always thought that. Remember to subscribe, comment, share. It really helps me out a lot. And we're getting ready for House of the Dragon, guys. We're almost there.